Hey everybody, Jeff Marconette Jr. Welcome into another edition of Make Every Second Count Live. Now, I'm your host, and I'm your host because I went through 3.5 months in the hospital, 2.5 of which I was in a coma. And I have been able to overcome all this stuff, and it's pretty amazing. So I'm trying to help other people be able to overcome those things as well. Now, on this show, we'd like to we'd like to have more of a conversation instead of a presentation. So please ask all the questions you would like. But my guest is having some technical difficulties at the moment. Now, I'll tell you about my guest in just a second. He just sent me a message. Hang on, sorry. Something went wrong while displaying this web page. Alright, so hold on. Let's try it again. Hi Brenda. It's good to see you. I'm sorry we're not getting going right on time like we normally do. We're just having some technical issues at the moment, and I apologize for that. But I know this guest will be worth your wait. So hang in there. Give us a minute here, and it might have worked now. Hey, can you hear me?
Not getting any sound.
Can you hear me?
No,
I can hear. I can hear you. Huh. Technical issues, guys. Technical issues.
Hello? Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me? Try. Oh, you got kicked off again. But we'll get this going here in a minute, guys. But the importance of why it is important to take life one day at a time. Now, this might seem like a cliche statement, but it's not at all. We're talking about recovery, and we're talking about things once you get past dealing with something. So, like Maté here, that is my guest tonight. Well, maybe he was in a car wreck when he was like 6 months ago, and he has been recovering ever since. And I thought this would be a fantastic way for us to be able to explain more about Make Every Second Count. Now, you see, I was on his show like probably 8 months ago, and he is from New Zealand, and that's a little island down by Australia, I believe, but I'm not real. He's still got kicked out again. But so I was joking with him when I was on there about not getting in a car accident just to find his own purpose. And then he was in a scooter accident. And it's just really tough to deal with those things when you are involved in something like that. All right. I was in a coma for 3.5 months. He spent, I think, 6 or 4 weeks in a coma. So he spent a while in a coma as well, but not as long as me. But he is experiencing some of the same things that I experienced. Now, he is having to go by little bits at a time. He keeps getting kicked out, and he relearns how to do new things, and he's retraining the neural pathways in his mind, and it's very difficult to do. And I mean, I go to a special therapist for this stuff, so it's not a lot of fun, guys. So sorry, we'll get started here in a minute. Hopefully. It doesn't like the link I am sending him. I don't get that, but he is restarting his computer at the moment. So we are still hopefully going to have this show. And I don't understand why people have this trouble. It's not their fault, but it's frustrating. And I am on one of the more simple platforms because I use StreamYard, and hopefully it works because it works for like everybody else. So tonight I am actually, I don't think it's working for him. So I am going to try and put together an ebook, and this ebook will be free. So it's for all you guys out there. It's for everybody that attends my events online or in person. And yeah, I am planning some in-person events, and I know after 2020 that's kind of exciting news. So I am looking forward to being able to get, darn it, he's still having issues. I am looking forward to being able to get on stage again, and that is very exciting for me. But this ebook would consist of like 3 or 4 principles, and I'm talking about having one of the principles being developing a no problem attitude. Now, when I say no problem attitude, I'm talking about everything in life. Like, I realize that certain things are problems, like this right here, and not being able to get him on here. But I'm going just to say no problem. He's having some technical issues at the moment. No problem. I go through drive-throughs at restaurants at times, get food, and they make it wrong. You know, my first reaction is no problem. I go to restaurants, get things made the wrong way, or get things cooked the wrong way. No problem. And it's very important that you guys develop a no problem attitude because it makes life so much easier. You can go through all kinds of things in your days, in your nights, or just in general, go through things. And if you say no problem about them, it makes them so much easier to deal with, because things can get difficult at times, and I'm not claiming that they're not going to get difficult at times, but the way you react to them is your best way to get over them. It's said that oh man, I forget who says it, but he says our reactions are our only true belongings. Now, so that means that whatever happens to you is going to depend on your reaction to it. Now, we'll see if this worked this time. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Jeff. I've got you on my mobile. Apologies.
Woo! That's awesome, man.
We hung in there.
Yes, I certainly did.
And we made contact.
Yeah.
So there's a lesson in that.
All right. So if you would like to go through a short introduction of yourself, tell everybody who you are and where you're from and what you do, I would appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, listen, thank you for everyone who's been willing to hold out this little bit longer to hear my story. My name's Maté Glamuzina. I live in New Zealand. Very fortunate to be down this part of the world, given what's been going on of late. The last 6 months, I guess, have been particularly interesting period for my life. I was in a pretty nasty e-scooter accident, which resulted in a number of injuries taking place throughout my body. And I guess there was a question as to how I would come out the other side. I guess we're tomorrow is going to be 6 months along that journey. And when I think about the last 6 months, it's just like so much has happened, and yet so much is still needs to happen, you know. But we're here, we're very much alive and very grateful to still be sound of mind.
Yes. That is amazing. So I have to ask you, what happened in this scooter accident? Or were you hit by a car? Were you just in a single scooter accident? Or
so to be honest, I can't really remember anything from the actual event, and I think at some level my mind's probably blocked it away so that I don't have to relive that trauma. From what I am told from witnesses is I swerved, hit the curb, went over the handlebars and crashed into a concrete planter box. There was some talk of me possibly undertaking a vehicle. So I don't know if I was swerving to avoid a vehicle or, but at the end of the day, that sheer sudden impact is what caused my injury. So, I mean, I had 3 breaks to my neck. I compressed 3 vertebrae. I broke 10 ribs. I punctured both my lungs. I've torn the nerves from my arm, so I don't have use of my right arm at the moment. But, you know, I was wearing a helmet, you know, which I think had I not been wearing a helmet, it would have been such a different story. And I'm still able to walk. I'm still able to talk. I've still got perfectly good use of my left hand, and that's becoming more and more of an aid these days. But it's been a real journey. I mean, I had 4.5 weeks in a coma. Basically, while I was in hospital, they put me in a coma just to allow my body a chance to start the healing. And of course, during that time, because I had punctured both my lungs, I can't remember if I mentioned that before, I got pneumonia.
Yeah.
And then I got a bacterial infection, and that stopped my blood from oxygenating. They had to helicopter me from one hospital to another in the middle of the night to potentially put me on a lung bypass machine. Although I got to the point where I was on 100% oxygen in the helicopter, I thankfully stabilized once I reached the new hospital, and I was able to avert that situation, which unfortunately doesn't have the best recovery rate. So it's been an uphill battle, to say the least. But I've been really buoyed by the support of friends and family throughout this journey. You know, it's quite interesting to see who is really there for you during times of need. You know,
Yes.
And often there'll be people who you think you have a strong relationship, and then when it's tested, you perhaps think, okay, maybe that's not quite as strong as you thought. And then there might be other people where you think perhaps the relationship's not as strong, and then these people kind of come to the forefront. And it's interesting that these difficult situations will often bring out the best in people.
Yes, that's amazing. I mean, it's terrible the way a lot of people have to go through things like this, things that almost end their life, to realize that they have a this earth, because it's not guaranteed from one day to the next.
Yeah, it's
So,
really interesting.
what was your toughest part?
The toughest part was probably, I guess, to be fair, my recovery to date has been pretty miraculous. So the doctors were saying I might be in hospital for a year. They were saying I might not be able to walk again. There was a lot of, I guess, questions as to what sort of recovery I would have. And I was out of the hospital, and I think it was 8 weeks, and I was described as the perfect patient, and just all these, I guess, good things were happening in terms of the recovery. And then I guess I hit a bit of a roadblock when it came to my arm, because I went to an appointment thinking that I would be given a date as to when surgery would be taking place, which would basically aid that process, to be told that surgery might not even be viable. And that really knocked the wind out of my sails, because all of a sudden, I guess, an aspect became outside of my control. And it was, well, it still is a challenge, because I'm still yet to get clarity as to what's going to happen next. I met with a specialist 2 weeks ago, and he at the time wasn't confident of a surgery at this point. However, he said we're going to give it another 4 to 6 weeks before making a final call, and then what will be will be. So I've just got to spend each and every day at the moment just working on what I can in terms of building the range of movement in the arm, which is pretty limited, to be fair, with the intention of creating it to be viable for surgery, because there's no point in further damaging an arm if it's not going to aid the process. If that makes sense. So, like, basically they would have to cut nerves and transplant them.
Yeah.
And if the nerves are no good, then it doesn't make sense to transplant faulty nerves.
Yeah. So did you have a brain injury at all?
I had head trauma. I had brain bleeds, and I initially, I mean, I was on a lot of drugs, so everything was a little bit woozy there. But I mean, I had difficulty with my emotions. I had difficulty regulating my body temperature. I would go from freezing cold to hot in a matter of seconds, and no real change in atmospheric conditions or what I was wearing. And I would fatigue very easily. So I was sleeping a lot. And it made things that little bit more challenging. And then, although I returned home at the beginning of the year, I went through a period of chronic pain, and had to go back to the hospital. And I got put on all manner of drugs. And while that kept the pain to a minimum, it also to a certain degree numbed my, I don't want to say joy of life, but just it kind of dulled my drive, if that makes sense. So I had less motivation to do anything. I'd go from medical appointment to a sleep, to a medical appointment to a sleep, and then it was just kind of going through the motions. And I had a rather weird situation a couple of weeks back where I got like what I think was a stomach bug, and I basically wasn't able to eat anything. And so I stopped taking my meds because I didn't have any food in my stomach. And the first night was particularly difficult because I went through withdrawal symptoms because I was on a number of opiates and such like for the pain. And then the next day, although I wasn't feeling particularly good, there was no pain. And for the first time in a long time, I actually felt like myself. And that was an interesting realization for me, because I guess I had the accident, I had the injuries, I had the drugs, which had served a purpose up to that point, but all of a sudden I felt like me again. And that was really empowering, because I felt like all of a sudden I had a little bit more say in, or I guess a little bit more control in terms of how each day would go. And while it's been a little bit of a challenge learning to sleep naturally again, I've just got much more drive, or much more involved in life, and I'm each and every day just doing my little exercises to build up my arm strength, with the desire to get surgery. But what will be will be.
Yeah, and what kind of things are you working on to get that motion back in your arm?
Yeah, so basically, I'm going to hold my arm up at the moment.
No problem.
So basically, I've got no function of the wrist or fingers at this point, so I just wear a guard just to kind of prop it up. I have very little sensation from below the elbow. Basically, I've got some movement in the shoulder, and a little bit in the arm. I don't know if you can see that.
Great job, man.
Yeah. So that's been a recent breakthrough. I was actually doing some visualization work where I basically lie there and imagine that my arm's moving, and it started moving, and I was like, "Oh my God, did that just happen?" And then I did it again. It's like, am I just moving it with my shoulder, or is it actually my arm? And I must have done it about 10 times just to make doubly sure. And then that night I was in so much pain because the arm hadn't been used for so long, and here I was overworking it. So since then, I took a bit of a break, and then each day I jump in the pool, which is really good because it's warm, it increases the circulation, and it also reduces the gravity factor. So I can just sit in the pool and just kind of hold my shoulder so I'm not using that, and just bring my arm forward and back and forward and back and forward and back. And it's incremental, but each and every day I'm just building a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And the thing is I'm making progress. I had the physio do a bit of an exam yesterday, and she said I think I had about 4 out of 5 with the tricep and about 2 out of 5 with the bicep. So we've got 3 or so weeks. Oh, still there, Jeff? Can you hear me? Oh, I'm not sure if you're still there. But anyway, we've got 3 or 4 weeks where basically we're going to work on it and see where the surgery will be a go. So fingers crossed at this stage, and we'll just have to take it as it comes. I mean, I don't know if anyone listened to my story with Jeff a few weeks back, but I guess quite a bit's happened since that time for me. And again, it's just chipping away each day, like slow and steady wins the race. And I'd like to think that in the not too distant future, we might even have some function in the wrist and hand. However, we have been looking into. You there, Jeff? Cool.
Sorry about that.
No worries. So although we don't necessarily know whether surgery is definite my arm at the moment, what my sister actually looked into is this company actually in the States called Myomo that do robotic arm braces. And they allow people who have had injuries like myself with the brachial plexus, or even stroke victims, to regain movement in their arms and hands through technology. So if surgery isn't viable, that may be something for me to look at in the future. I've kind of thought if I do get back into the coaching space, I might be able to rebrand myself as like Robo Coach or something, and work with people who potentially have had loss of limbs or paralysis in some form. So it's I guess it's about having options at the end of the day, and having something that I can work towards, whatever that may be. Having a little bit of difficulty with your connection. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Now, I know.
Sorry, Jeff.
Sorry, man. I'm having internet issues again. But so I know you wanted to call this episode One Day at a Time. What are you taking one day at a time, and why is it so important that you take one day at a time?
I guess, like I mean, earlier I talked about my recovery and how speedy it was, but kind of hitting that roadblock and realizing that perhaps I actually had a lot longer to go than I realized. And yeah, I always bring it back to the hare and the tortoise, and that whole idea that slow and steady wins the race. I've kind of I have to work within my current capacity, and because of the fact that I haven't really used my right arm for the last 6 months, I've lost a lot of muscle mass. So any movement I do with it is fairly limited, and I've just got to chip away to improve it. And it's not going to happen overnight, but it is going to happen. And just in the last couple of weeks, especially now that I'm more connected with myself, I can see measurable differences in a matter of days. And like I go to my medical appointments, and like I went to the doctors yesterday, and I hadn't seen them in like a month, and they were just blown away by my progress over that time. Whereas for me, you know, seeing it every day maybe is not quite so significant, but I do know that it's happening.
Yes, I'm with you on that one, because I know people tell me
Sorry, Jeff,
over short amounts of time, and I can't see that progress over that time. Darn it. But the length of time.
I only caught part of that, sorry.
No, sorry.
Because I have a little bit of difficulty tuning pages these days, I've got into the audiobooks.
Yeah.
One that really resonated with me recently was one called Mindset by Carol Dweck. And it's all around the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And one is kind of the idea that the fixed mindset is based around the idea that your abilities are kind of set. You have natural talents, and that's kind of it. Whereas the growth mindset is based on the fact that through effort, you can develop whatever ability you might have. And I mean, you look at a child, and they will repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat until they get things, you know. Whereas as we get older, we have a tendency not to push the boundaries so much and just live within our comfort zone, because we don't want to be seen to fail. But it's been interesting kind of reflecting on that and putting it into this situation now where I'm not going to accept just the current situation. I'm going to put in the effort and work and work and work and work to look to further develop the abilities beyond what they are at the moment. I'm not too sure if you can still hear me.
I have got. I'm having some terrible internet tonight.
Yeah, that's all right.
I've got to get this fixed. All right, man. I'd hate to cut you short because I love everything you are saying, but I'm going to have to deal with this situation, and which is probably going to take me some couple days here, but I need everybody out there, including you.
I lost you again, Jeff.
Count. Why? Because you never seconds are going to run out on your one life. All right. Hey, thank you, Maté.
You're most welcome, Jeff. And perhaps we can have another conversation in 6 months' time to see what sort of progress I've made.
Yeah.